Job hunting can be a pain, especially as a recent graduate. These are some of the things that I did, some of the things that worked for me to get the offers that I have gotten in the last month or so. On the 23rd of March 2023, I got laid off from my current job working as a mechanical engineer at an R&D consulting firm based in Sydney. And as soon as I got that letter of rejection, I started looking elsewhere for jobs that fit my passions, that fit the things that I wanted to do in terms of the careers that I wanted to get into and in terms of sustainable job career growth. And I just wanted to share my experience going through this process of entering with various different companies into engineering industry, and what the job roles were, what questions I was asked, what the procedure looked like, and what things benefited me in the interview process. The things that I talked about, the things that made me a better prospect in getting the offers that I did get in the last month or so. So the first company that I interviewed for specializes in the mechanical building services sector, particularly in HVAC systems within buildings, already existing buildings, as well as new buildings that they're working on, just that building services sector. But the mechanical side of things, because I was interviewing for the graduate mechanical engineering role, particularly in their control systems department. So the control system departments basically cater towards creating a more renewable building. And so things like, how to effectively create control systems which minimize the energy consumption of buildings. That was a big part of the job role. And so the questions that I was asked obviously were very similar to the other interviews. At least the first ones were why engineering, why this job in particular. It was a small consulting firm, but they've been around for the last 20 to 30 years because they only specialize in high-end projects within Sydney. And because I recently worked at a startup, I was very fluid with knowing how the intricacies of working with a startup is, and so I was familiar with that, and that helped me out in that interview, in that question particularly, because it was very easy for me to answer that, considering I've already worked there in a similar company environment. That's something that they looked for, because this was a very it was a technical role, but not too technical, because I'll be working as a graduate engineer but also a consultant pretty much. So things like detailed CAD design and detailed drawings and technical details and whatnot, that was not going to be the things that I would be doing. I would be doing more of the high-end work of pretty much meeting with other clients, analyzing requirements, and basically communicating with them. So they were looking for someone who was very good at communicating, which I feel like was much the case with a lot of the other jobs that I was interviewing for. Communication is one of the most important things that they ask for in interviews, because as a graduate engineer, they're confident in knowing that you probably have the technical skills to do the job, but what would make you stand out is your communication aspect, how well you are in dealing with people with different technical backgrounds, because a lot of engineering is just that. So it was pretty much 1 hour of just asking questions about how good I am in dealing with issues with different people, and these communication questions. But the last half an hour was more catered towards how familiar I am with control systems and building services industry, what made me passionate about joining them, what things I enjoy doing in my free time, things of that matter. So just general questions. There weren't that many technical questions, but I did thoroughly enjoy the interview because it felt more like a discussion rather than an interview. Even though there were 3 people interviewing me, 2 of them were the directors and 1 was the control systems manager. And so that was the first interview in this building services firm. I'm going to name it Company 1. So my second interview was at a physical asset management company. This was a bit different from the things that I wanted to do. I particularly am passionate more about the mechanical side of things, like actually designing the technical side, and this was a bit different from that because this was just physical asset management, so it was more so logistics and things of that matter. Even though they were looking for a mechanical engineer graduate, that was the name of the role. And so I'd gone for the interview regardless because I wanted to see how things went and I wanted to learn from the interview as well. I feel like just going for interviews helps you become better at answering the questions, become more calm, become more articulate and analytical with how to answer those questions. And I went for that reason, even though I was a bit unsure if I actually wanted to work in this company. This was a medium-sized company, around 30 to I guess 35 people, but they've been around again for the last 30 to 40 years, specializing in asset management, engineering, machinery, and whatnot, all around Australia. They cater to various different industries. They have a particular software and a particular way of managing those assets, as well as reliability engineering and things of that matter, which is still a sub part of mechanical engineering, just the boring sub part, I would imagine. Like, that's what I would see it as. And but regardless, I went for the interview, and again, the questions were very similar to the ones that was asked to me beforehand in the other interview, the previous one at least, the other company, which is basically why engineering and why that company in particular, why asset management, where do I see myself in the next 10 to 15 years. There weren't any technical interviews per se, but they did tell me like what the job would entail, which is a very repetitive work. I would have to go to a lot of these industries all around Australia, so there was chances of travel, but I would have to go to these factories and basically lies with the people there in terms of what the reliability of their equipment looked like, things of that matter. So it was very repetitive, and they pretty much told me that it was going to be like that, and if I was ready for a challenge like that. But they said that there was going to be a lot of other cool stuff to do as well later down the line. Regardless, I answered the questions to the best of my ability. I told him that I still was passionate about the role. I still potentially liked working at their company, even though deep down inside I was like, I don't know if I want to work here or I still told him that, and luckily that was the only interview that I had. And then later the week after, I got an offer from them. When I went through the offer, although it was I guess for a graduate engineer it was around the average salary, that is not, I guess, my main concern. I just knew that I was not going to enjoy working there, and that's not the career that I wanted to end up in. I applied because I saw the posting and I was like, let's see what happens. Now on to the third company. This is another company which I had applied for just for the sake of it. I saw an ad online and it was basically a sales engineering role, sales/estimation engineering for this pretty old manufacturing company, again based in Australia. They manufacture particular parts for machinery and provide those I guess parts all around Australia for construction purposes, as well as for use case in other machinery. They needed a sales engineer, so that's estimation. That was pretty much the name of the role. To join their company, they were looking for graduate mechanical engineers in particular. I guess they were looking for expertise in that field. And basically, this was a very interesting interview because when I went to their company, they have a pretty big setup here based in Sydney. Pretty much the person that I was interviewing, but the interviewer was a senior engineering manager. Once he asked me the question of where I see myself in the next 10 to 15 years and my passions and why I did engineering, he basically said that I was a bit overqualified for the role and he didn't want to see me waste my potential in that role. So I was a bit like, okay, you're telling me this straight up. And basically his reasoning was that the job role was going to be a very boring one, and he was concerned that because of the things that I want to do, because of my ambitions and whatnot that I pretty much shared with him, he said that this role would just bore me. Like I would get bored by working there, and I would eventually leave in the next couple of months. And he pretty much straight up told me this. He said that he would love to hire me, but it was just that this role would not be fully suitable for me. And he told me to think about it. He gave me a week. I was like, think about it if you actually want to do this. And I really loved that he did that because he was very upfront with me. He just didn't give me like an offer straight up. He was just like, okay, think about it and see if this is actually what you want to do, because I feel like you could pretty much do something, I guess, bigger than this for some reason. He said that to me, which was pretty nice. And from there onwards, I told him that where I could see myself in that role if I did take that career pathway, and that's not something that I want to do at the current moment. So I pretty much emailed him that I told him, and thanks for telling me this straight up, and I appreciate it quite a bit. And I just was not interested from there onwards. So yeah, that was the third company that I interviewed for. So the fourth and final company that I interviewed for a large-scale multinational company specializing in hot water supply appliances, as well as solar, as well as different pipings. And there's a lot of things that this company specializes in, but they're basically manufacturers within the appliance industry, and they were looking for a product design engineer. And so I applied because I felt like this really suits the things that I want to do. It's catered towards mechanical design, as well as taking a more holistic approach and creating new designs for their R&D team. And basically I got called in for an interview where I was in front of 3 different people. One was the HR, 2 of them were managers in the R&D space, one from controls and one from just pure mechanical design side of things. And after seeing my resume, they basically brought in this other person. The other person was working in the controls division, and they thought that my resume fit that job as well, and so they brought that person along. And again, they asked me, the first half an hour of the interview was basically again about why I chose engineering, my ambitions as an engineer, where I see myself for the next 10 to 15 years, why I chose that to apply in that company, particularly that company, as opposed to other companies in the field. And so I answered these questions, and then I went a bit more technical into what experience I have using CAD, what sort of softwares I've used, how I've implemented those softwares into the projects that I've created. I pretty much have a portfolio attached into my resume, so I've talked about my projects in those as well. I can showcase that to you as well. If needed, just comment down below. I'll send you my resume, a template of what I use and what has worked for me. So basically they were pretty much going project to project, which was displayed on my resume, and asked me as to how I use CAD, how I use different mechanical concepts and skills that I've attained from university in those projects to create the things that I did, and how I would potentially use those same expertise in creating some of the projects that they're working on that they would describe in the design process and whatnot. And in addition to that, because they saw that my resume fit the control side of things as well, because I have a bit of electrical mechatronic experience with coding and whatnot, when I combine that with my projects, how that could fit into the controls division as well. So that's a different job. It was a product designer, not a product designer, but a product development engineer, particularly in the controls R&D department. That lasted an hour and a half, so it was a pretty long interview because there's pretty much 2 job roles. But again, it was a lot of just how I see engineering and my management skills in the case of project management, as well as communication communication management, how to effectively communicate and how to deal with issues. Because it's a big company, they talked about how there's a bureaucratic way of doing things. There's a lot of constraints involved in designing new appliances, because there's marketing, there's finances, budgets and whatnot. And a lot of the times that could take ages because you're dealing with people all around the world, and communication can get pretty hard in such an environment. Because I haven't worked in a bigger company before, they wanted to make sure if I was fit for that purpose, and so a lot of the conversations were based around that. They did say that if they liked me, they would give me a call a day or 2 after, which they did, and they've sent me a psychometric testing link to do that test, and they've also scheduled a second interview for me the next week. So if you guys want to know how that goes, feel free to let me know. And yeah, this was pretty much the process that I've taken in the last month as a recent graduate in mechanical engineering based in Australia. And so if anyone is in a similar situation that I am in, I hope this video helped. Videos similar to this on YouTube have helped me expedite my process. I hope someone could feel the same way that I did while watching those other YouTube videos. So yeah, thank you.